Hey guys, it's coming my review for Malignant. And this film, we focus on the character of Madison, and one day she goes through this very big freak accident, which I'm not gonna get into here, but after this does occur, she starts to have these very weird and grisly visions of murders. She's constantly going back to them. She finds herself put into these, very grisly killings that go on, and she eventually does start to realize that her torment isn't just vision, it is in fact a terrifying reality, and now she has to do what she can to try to figure out what could potentially be the source behind this, but also confront a very damning memory in her past. So, Malignant overall, I was very excited for this film. For one reason alone. I mean, the fact that James Wan was returning to do a horror movie, had me very excited. It's been a minute since he's taken on something like this before. He hasn't really done a traditional horror film in a while. He's focused a lot more lately on just blockbusters, and so I was happy to see him kind of go back to his roots in a sense, but I also didn't really know what this movie was going to be. The trailers made it seem kind of generic overall, and just kind of like a typical sort of paranormal film, so I kind of went into this not really knowing how it was going to turn out, and I came out honestly blown away. This is nothing like what you are expecting. Malignant is truly one of the most twisted and bonkers horror films I have seen in a very long time that truly went in some incredibly unconventional and weird directions that I don't think is going to work for everyone, but my god, does it work so well for me. This is one of the most ambitious horror films I've seen in a while, and I'm very excited to talk more about, but we are just going to dive into it right now. When it comes to the cast here, I'll say this right now. This is not really a movie about acting. Some of the acting here is not the strongest, I will definitely say that, but the actors that are really great here are really fucking great. This is, without a doubt, the best I have ever seen Annabelle Wallis in a movie. She completely helms this entire film. Without spoiling, she really is given a lot to do here. It's a very challenging performance, and she does a really great job, I think, of really just kind of leaning into it. You feel just as terrified as her. You can tell just how much this is really affecting her, physically, but also mentally. The effect that this has on her, is a palpable one, and I think she does a really good job of diving headfirst into that. But then when you start to realize, when she starts to sort of grapple with what's actually happening and we start to find out more about her character, her performance becomes that much more convincing. There's certain parts throughout this movie where you'll watch them, you'll be like, why is she reacting to things that way? Why is she saying it like that? And then as you uncover what's going on, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And that made her performance, I think, that much more impressive because she is playing a woman that is purposefully keeping you in the dark. She doesn't know a lot of what's going on. She herself is kept in the dark. There's a lot of things that has gone on in her life that she's kind of blocked out, and I think Wallis overall does such an amazing job of that, especially in the final act of this movie. There is so much that she's given to do here, and given to the wrong actor, it could be a complete misfire, but she absolutely carries this entire film on her back, and I loved what she ended up doing here. Like I said, Wallis is an actress that I've never been that impressed by, but after this film, I need to see her do more horror stuff like this immediately because she really did such a phenomenal job here. Now we got to get into the thing that I think really does make this film special, which of course is the directing here from James Wan. Like I said before, one of the best horror directors out there. I mean, he's given us amazing films like Saw and The Conjuring and Insidious and other stuff like that. But I feel like this film really just reminds us how much of a master he is with horror, how comfortable this is for him. And what I think he does an even better job with here is he really does challenge himself. For the first, act or so of this movie, you think you know where this film is going to go. It goes down a very predictable route. It's very much this traditional sort of, chilling horror film of sorts, could be paranormal in a sense, and I found it to be quite chilling. I know a lot of people said that it was very over the top and silly. I didn't necessarily get that reaction from it. I actually thought it was very unsettling in that way, but it does feel a bit familiar. It kind of felt like Juan was sort of just on autopilot, like he wasn't really doing anything that different. And then as the movie goes on, you start to realize why he's going about it this way. He wants to mislead you. He wants you to feel comfortable. He wants to put you in a sense where you know where this is going. And then when he pulls that rug out from under you, you are that much more shocked. And trust me when I say he goes to places that you've never really seen him gone before. And after this film, I really want to see him do more stuff like this. I mean, this is just the kind of horror film that you just don't see today. I really want to get more into it, but when you eventually realize, what this film really is, I think his directing becomes that much more effective as a result. I really love what he ended up doing in terms of the directing. I think it really just proves how much of an auteur he is when it comes to horror, how this really is when I think he is at his strongest. He's a really great director through and through, but I think he really is at his best when he is taking on, horror stuff like this, because the way he is constantly challenging himself, is just so impressive to watch, and I really love the way he went about it. He did it in a way that really did shake me to my core, and I really love the way that he went about this film, so just top-notch directing from him all around. But the writing as well here is so good in this movie, because again, when it comes to the character of Madison, there's a lot of things that you just aren't sure about at first. You look at this character, and throughout a good portion of this movie, I'm like, there just isn't a lot going on with her. It doesn't really seem like we're going to dive all that deep into her. They approach things at a very surface level. Things kind of just happen to her, and then it's moved on from. She has an adopted sister in this movie. They don't really dive all that deep into it. But as the film goes on, we start to peel back the layers of her character. And the more that we do, the more interesting this story does end up becoming. And again, when you eventually uncover what this film is actually about, that's something that I really did appreciate, because the film will go in some very typical directions. At first, it seems like this is just, you have a killer, and, Madison is being blamed for the killer's wrongdoings. We've seen that story 1,000 times. There doesn't really seem to be anything different going on. It's grisly as hell, and definitely is very violent to watch, and the film does a good job at it, but there's more going on here. There's a lot more happening in terms of this film. This is really, without spoiling it, a film I think that is about control and the lack of control that we have. And I can't really say much more than that, but that's really what I think this movie is trying to get at. It really is trying to be a movie about the lack of control one may have, and sort of like the battle, their inner battle for control overall. I think that's a big part of what this movie is really about, and I think they do a really great job with that. And once that third act kicks in, though, like I said, it all just really pieces together. And what I think is so brilliant about the twist in this movie is that it isn't one that just came out of nowhere. It was one that I found to be very shocking, but made a lot of sense when thinking about it. I never expected the movie to go in the direction that it did, because it goes in a very untraditional direction. But it really does recontextualize a lot of things that you saw in this movie. There's a lot of scenes that I was like, why are we going about this that way? Why are we, shooting this scene that way? Why is this scene going in this sort of campy fashion? And then once we uncover what's going on, it all just pieced together so well for me, and I found myself so invested from there, not really knowing what was going to happen. And I feel like it's very hard to create a horror film that is unpredictable throughout, and this film absolutely is. There were so many moments here where I didn't know how it was going to play out. I didn't know how it was going to happen, and I really do commend this movie for that. So all around, I think this is a very strong screenplay. I think they did a really great job with it overall. Let's talk about the cinematography here, because holy shit, this film does not hold back in terms of its visual style. First of all, this film has a very creepy and eerie sort of style to it that I think works really well. Every time we're put into these grisly murders, it does feel like a nightmare. It feels very bizarre. It feels otherworldly. It doesn't feel like something that is actually happening. And again, it's done as a way to sort of put things in Madison's perspective, where to her, this is just a vision, where to her, this is just something that's like dreamlike, but you realize that it's not. There's a lot more happening here, and I think every single kill in this movie is so satisfying to watch, and I was honestly really surprised by how far Wan took it, because he's not really known to be this like gore sort of trauma-esque director, but oh my god, does he go for it here. And after this movie, I mean, you will be begging him to make more movies like this, because the way that he goes about constructing these scenes is just insane to me. I was so shocked with how far he took some of them. There's one especially, I can't even say what happens in it, but it involves a character in a location, and they're talking to a group of people. That's all I can say from there. You'll know the scene when you see it, but it is so insane the way they went about it. I thought that, again, it was just so well conceived in that way. I was so glued to the screen in the way they did it when it came to the gore, and just in general, it's just so relentless in terms of the thrills. But something I really do appreciate when it comes to a lot of the scares here is that for a while, it's very sporadic. In fact, I can see people getting kind of bored with this movie at first, because they'll be wondering, where are all the kills? Why are we not seeing that many? I was honestly, impressed by how restrained this movie was at first. This is not a film that is like riddled with jump scares. This is not a film that has, a bunch of like false stuff going on. It's actually very patient in that way, and I think it really does make up for it once you realize how deliberate it is, once you realize that they are deliberately saving it for that third act when everything is just thrown at the wall, and it just becomes one of the craziest fucking things you will have seen in a while. I think they did such a great job with the scares here. They kept it minimal, but every single one of them turned out to be so effective as a result, and I really did love a lot of the cinematography here. It absolutely gets its job done in terms of the cinematography. It's honestly some of the best I have seen all year, especially when it comes to the reveal itself, or what's actually going on, the CGI, and the way everything is laid out. Again, it honestly seems practical. It doesn't seem as, yes, it can be kind of goofy at first, but I was able to buy into it very well, and I really love the way this film did go about it. So in terms of cinematography, I really did love this film a lot. The score by Joseph Bashara I also really liked a lot here. It's honestly quite euphoric and sort of like this techno-esque score that I thought worked very well in this movie. I haven't really heard anything quite like it in a little bit, and I really like the way they kind of like played around with it. So yeah, that was definitely one of the best parts of this movie for me. And the ending of this movie, again, was just insane to me. I really like the way they did end up wrapping things up here, and I think just in general, it's a film that is constantly topping itself. It's a film that is constantly finding ways to mislead you, and I think it does such an excellent job with that. That being said, this is not a perfect film. There's definitely moments of it that don't work quite as well as they should have, and we're just going to get into right now. So, yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of people have said this film is very cheesy and over the top, but I didn't have a problem with that because I think it definitely did embrace that, especially in the first act or so of this movie. It really does embrace that quite well. But that being said, from a character perspective, aside from Madison and her sister, there isn't really a lot going on here in terms of these characters. I found a few of them to be quite flat, and I wanted to dive a bit deeper into who they really are. There's a subplot especially that comes up, and it doesn't really get resolved ever, and I kind of was just like, what's the point of this subplot? Why are we even doing this? And I didn't really understand the point of it overall, and I think they could have done a little bit more of that. And I will say, the first like 15 to 20 minutes, I wasn't really feeling it when it came to this movie. I thought that it was honestly really slow, and I wasn't really that invested in what was going on. Once we get to a certain revelation that happens like in the first, towards the end of the first act of this film, that's really when I started to get more into this, and it pretty much just kind of locked me in from there. But other than that, I mean, there really isn't too much to complain about here. This is just such an inventive and creative horror film that is truly unlike anything I have seen in quite a bit. It proves just how great of a director James Wan really is, really pushing himself in a way that he hasn't before. It's relentless in terms of its gore. It's honestly honestly really creepy at points. It's got a standout performance from Annabelle Wallis, who I really do hope moving forward does more films like this, and a twist that absolutely shook me to my core that honestly very few horror films are really able to do. I don't think this has been the strongest year for horror, but this is absolutely one of the strongest ones I have seen in a very long time, and it is such an amazing comeback for James Wan overall. I really do hope moving forward he continues to make movies just like this one. But I'm going to give Malignant overall an A-. And I will say right now, I don't think this movie is going to be for everyone. I do think there are parts of this film that are just going to be too weird for some people, and I completely understand that. But for me, especially when we got to that third act, oh my god, was I riveted. I mean, my jaw was literally on the floor. I had no idea what was going to happen throughout the rest of this movie. And again, like I said, I feel like it's very hard to make a horror film unpredictable because we've seen so many films that recycle the same stuff, that even have similar themes, similar elements. But this film finds a way to do something different, finds a way to go in such a unorthodox direction, and it's so much better as a result. It honestly is the kind of film that I'm shocked that actually is a mainstream horror movie. This is the kind of film that just doesn't really get made these days, and I hope we get to see more like this because I think it's something really special. I think it's something really different, and I think it's one that is destined to be a cult classic moving forward. I think years from now, we are going to be talking about Malignant as just this really weird sort of body horror-esque film that's unlike anything out there, and I'm very excited to see, you know, what people really do feel about it in a few years, because I really do think it's unlike anything out there right now. You know what isn't out there, though? Me forgetting to record an outro. I don't know why this keeps happening. I've done this many times before. It's just an ongoing joke at this point. But that's it for my review of Malignant. Let me know what you guys saw this movie. All left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.